Rob Rinder.
Clever,
compassionate,
questioning,
consultative,
convincing,
convicted. Rob Rinder. Malud, Malloud, Malive. Rob Rinder and Drive on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, you're listening to Rob Rinder. Good evening, in fact, as it's 6:04 on your drive home on Talk Radio, the home of common sense and great British values. And that lovely moment, I've announced a competition. Go on social media, you'll see it in due course. It's the Pete Hebblethwaite is a Dirtbag competition. Make art, make clothes, make whatever it is, but the winner will have a donation from me to the charity of the winner's choice. Now, that's a British story, but we're about to jump over the pond to our own professor himself, Professor John Christopher Buer, Prof JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. Prof JC, it is as ever and always a gift and privilege to hear you. I've just seen President Joe Biden land in Poland before I came into the studio, and he, I should say, was on the border where I was standing less than 48 hours ago. He made a very important announcement that NATO will act if Russia uses chemical weapons against Ukraine. This is the first time that the American president has really drawn a critical line in the sand. It's an important moment, right?
It is an important moment, and this president has drawn a line in the sand, and hopefully he will not allow this line to be infringed upon. But what he made very clear was that he will act on this in concert with the NATO allies, and I think that was important because it will be a joint effort, and I think that's important. And the reason that Joe Biden went over there to begin with, to NATO and to visit the G7
right,
and to the EU was because he wanted to show unity and he wanted to bring all of these people together. And that's the kind of president I think he is. He wants to bring people together and really isolate and make a pariah out of Vladimir Putin. And I think that's the process.
Yeah.
And I think that the chemical thing, the nuclear thing, and the weapons of mass destruction are something that Putin is trying to hold over people's heads. And the fact that he is losing terribly, I mean, 15,000 troops are already dead reportedly. And that's how many were killed in the entire war in Afghanistan, which made the Russians pull out. So this has happened in only a month in Ukraine.
And it also looks like
up against the wall.
Right. It also looks like Ukrainian forces are winning back territory in Kiev. You know, I was out there with my brilliant producer, Ricky Freelove, and he was talking to our extraordinary fixer, Oksana. You know, and she said, you know, if my town is surrounded, I have to go. And she said to him, look, the thing is, you have to understand is they're ready to fight for our cities. We're ready to die for them. You know, you think and you reflect on that. We haven't heard that sort of patriotism, that sort of bravery and courage in the West for generations because we haven't had to, right? It's one of the features of this war.
Well, we have never had in Great Britain and the United States for many, many years. Well, I shouldn't say. Yeah. In the both world wars you did.
Sure.
The Nazis were encroaching across the English Channel, ready to go for you guys. And to fight for your own soil, to fight for your own integrity, to fight for what you believe in, to fight for your homeland is something. And these Russian boys that are going over there, and they bring portable crematoria so the mothers don't see the bodies when they come home. They have no idea. They thought they went for an exercise, and they're being slaughtered. And you know it's on Putin. And I feel for the Russian people because they're in some ways, they're cousins to the Ukrainians.
Yeah,
you know, you've been there.
Prof. JC, you know, taking the American angle, I want a bit of help with this. I mean, you are, to say the very least, no fan of your ex-president, President Trump. But one of the things that I think, give credit where credit's due, even to somebody you don't like. He was right about NATO losing its power and influence in the region, not least because America was disproportionately paying the bills for NATO. And actually, I heard rumors and grumbles about that across the political aisle, including certain Democrats in the past. Do you think moving forward that this is going to mean that countries like Germany and the Baltic states that benefit from all of the strategic advantages and the defense that NATO brings can see what happens? The Ukraine didn't have it. Do you think it means that it's going to strengthen NATO and that they'll be more willing to fund it and not leave America to act as a world policeman on their own?
I believe this is a crisis point, and I think Joe Biden's main message and main objective is to strengthen NATO. And NATO was being demoralized by Trump, and now Biden has come into the picture, and he's saying, wait a second, we are going to pull all of this together. And don't forget, Putin did something very crazy for himself. He didn't want Ukraine involved in NATO or the EU. And look what happened. We now have 100,000 American troops in NATO, and that may be somewhat permanent. And Putin has really pulled the plug on himself. And Trump, Trump is Trump. If he's around, he'll be around. But he is Putin's boy. He got elected because of the support. He did it to break up NATO. That's why he put it in, and that's why he did it. What do you want to call the Brexit? The same kind of thing. But Putin has his hands in all of this stuff, and that's why he's there. And the fact is, he's falling apart. He's become a pariah, and he's soon to be effectiveless.
Well, we'll see about how ineffective he'll be. I mean, he has staying power, if nothing else. It's a frightening thing that when you look around the apparatchiks in the Kremlin, there doesn't, and I'm insider and I follow it pretty closely. It doesn't seem like an obvious replacement, or at the moment, as it currently stands, all of the kleptocrats that have benefited from the horror of his rule, nobody seems to want to supplant him at the moment. But, God willing, and tomorrow is a new day in politics and in the world, as we've discovered. So who knows? If you're listening, God, please act. Can I just turn the attention to a new topic, but it's one that I've been very interested in, which is about the refugee crisis. Now, Prof. JC, I should tell you that I started the show by saying I spoke to a lot of Ukrainians coming into the train station where where President Biden where he is right now. And one of the things they say is they're really grateful to the Brits for providing them with the military technology and hardware and getting the stuff there. Old people, young people will say that they know what's going on, but they don't even know that the UK is ready, or there are homes out there ready to sponsor refugees. And the ones that do want to come here temporarily, they get bogged down in bureaucracy, and it's a total nightmare, despite the fact that people like somebody who's just written in as I'm talking to you said, I registered for the Ukraine scheme when it was open. My family applied for a visa. That's family in Ukraine. They haven't heard back, even though they named me as a sponsor, because it's a total nightmare of bureaucracy. Now, that's a real shameful thing. It's one thing to provide the military hardware to get that done and the backbone for NATO to stand up. But there are two elements to all. There's also the poorest and the weakest who suffer most. In this case, it's women and children and the elderly, the disabled and vulnerable. To what extent is America stepping up when it comes to refugees?
Well, as you know, and by the way, thank you for all your miracle work while they're helping.
Overstated, Prof. But anyway,
as best
do carry
you
on.
can. I've been following it and impressive. We're trying to do that in this country. The president has said he will admit 100,000 refugees. Now, 100,000 refugees is beyond anyone from Central America or the Afghanistanis who he's promised to welcome. So there's going to be a little political hardball there. He's promised it. But does he have an actual way of facilitating this? I don't think so. Now, can
I stop you and ask you about that? Because it's the same problem that we have here, right? So you have let's say, even in this case, and actually the scheme that you won't know him necessarily, but Michael Gove announced it had a noble cause at its centre. Certainly it appeared that way, right? We're going to open our homes and our hearts. Here it is. That's the political announcement. But you need the bureaucratic will to deliver on it. In this case, it's the Home Office. Excuse me, in this case, the Home Office. In your case, it might be the Ministry of Homeland Security or whoever it is. Who does that? Who does the bureaucratic work to make sure that promise can be honoured?
Well, it has to come from the legislature, which means the Senate and the House of Representatives. These happen to be laws, and it then has to come from Homeland Security, has to come from the State Department. It has to come from all of the other bureaucracies that have to approve these individuals to come in, whether they come under the standard refugee process or the humanitarian parole process. It is a bureaucratic nightmare. It's one thing to say, you're all welcome, we want you all to come here, but there can be a direct executive order from the President of the United States saying, do it now, I demand it.
Why doesn't he do that, Prof. JC?
Well, I don't know. If he's listening, maybe one of his chiefs of staff will take it. I did work in an administration. I advised presidents. It was Clinton, and I can say do it right, and let's clear it up. And these people have to fly by plane. You help people go from Virgin, wonderful, to the UK, but these individuals, mommies with babies, have to fly all the way from Poland to where? To Washington, to JFK, and then what?
There are not going to be many that want to come, but there are not going to be many that want to come. There aren't that many that want to come to the UK. They want to stay close to the Ukraine because they want to go back and fight and rebuild. Many of them already are. But where we make a promise and a government makes a promise on the people's behalf, it should be honoured. Now, we haven't got much time, but I'm... because I am obviously very interested in this, watching the Senate hearings of your very likely to be new Supreme Court Justice. One of the complaints that was made was a question that she was asked, great jurist as she is, and certainly great academic and judicial background, 10 years on the bench. She was asked whether she could define what a woman was, and she said she couldn't because she's not a biologist. There seems to be a lot of backlash about that. Some people say that's an obvious answer for a judge to be able to respond to. What do you think, and what's the feeling in terms of any damage it may have done to her chances of making the bench, Prof. JC?
I've been watching, but I didn't get into the pill pool of each little question being asked about that. I will say this: the Republicans, the white men who probably don't know a tenth of what this woman knows in terms of jurists, they went after her for the most obscure questions, and they fear nothing more than a black woman sitting as a justice. And we have enough problems with Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife, who tried to overdo the election of Joe Biden. So we have a real potpourri of stuff. We could do an entire show.
We could, and we don't have time. But one thing I will say, I mean, I think that the process by which judges are grilled by the Senate does enormous and nowadays incurable violence to the reputation of the Supreme Court. You think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Scalia, difference of opinions and judicial philosophies, to say the very least, voted overwhelmingly by bipartisan majorities, and where we are now. And
may I just quickly add?
Yeah, you may.
We never had this kind of confirmation hearing before there was a Jewish justice brought up to the court.
Which one?
We never had this.
Oh. Well, why'd you say Jewish?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Way before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we never had this kind of scrutiny. But it shows you how racist and anti-Semitic this country can be, and we need to rise above it.
You certainly do. Not least because, as I say, it does violence judicial independence. And Lily, all of the laws and all of the cases that the Supreme Court hears aren't 5-4 decisions. They are technical issues, but that's a conversation for another time. You've been listening to Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. Disagree with him or agree with him, he certainly knows his stuff. Over in America, you're listening to Rob Rinder here at the home of Common Sense and British Values at Talk Radio. Pete Hebblethwaite is a dirtbag. It's 6:17.
Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters